Welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for February 26, 2020. We're going to follow the agenda, which was posted in the issue within the TSC repo, which is 827. We have fairly light agenda, but we'll start with, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share? I think if nobody has any others, I can share that the CFP for the OPS world has been extended, so I think you have to the end of this week. And the registration is also open for the OpenJS world as well. So if you're interested in getting your registration early, now to the registration. We move on to the terms of the board is we can open up the admin repo to see specific issues. Provide an update on.
Hey Michael, you're not audible. Your microphone's gotten worse and worse, and it's now.
I will try a different headset. Hold on.
That seems to be the same so far.
Okay, am I back?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good. Turn down the volume a little bit. Okay, so we were just moving on to the agenda, unless there's some other discussion going while I was off. No, okay. So the first thing tagged, sorry, I was looking at the board for the updates on the board. So this week is the board meeting. So if there's anything that hasn't been brought up already, just let me know so that I know to bring it. In terms of the first thing on the board, our request to the board for build resources. I can't remember if the latest update I gave on that, but recently we got a couple people from Microsoft who are involved in the Electron team who've been identified as having between the two of them a day of week to help contribute on the build side. So we now have a new person from Google and a couple more people from Microsoft who are going to get involved and working on getting them connected and ramped up on the build working group. So I think we're making some progress there, and we'll see how much getting those people on board sort of helps to lessen some of our existing issues. And on the other request, we're going to have a private section at the end.
James.
So we'll cover that. Sorry, what was that, Gabriel?
Could you please promote James?
Promote James. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I think that's the update on the board. As I said, any questions or things that we want to discuss on that front before we move on? No? Okay, so let's move on to the first issue, which is tagged in the agenda. It is number 31317, recent behavior change of buffered write callbacks. I'm just going to look to see who opened that and tagged it.
Yeah, it was me.
Okay, so Matteo, why don't you take that one?
What happened is that we made a change back last summer on how callbacks are handled in streams. And what happened is that we changed it. We made the callbacks always be called. Before that, the callback could be not called in case of stream error. So if you do .write and you pass a callback to write, stream.write and you pass a callback to write, that call in 12 and before that, that callback was in some cases was not called at all, resulting in possible, memory leaks and other problems. In 13 last summer, we landed a change from Ranag that was making those callbacks always called in case a stream was destroyed destroyed, which meant that those callbacks was called with an error. Note that this is actually some of those this is less. It's not to some extent perfect in the sense of it was not really finished with an error. They just really never happened because the stream was closed. So that's the crux of the issue. The reason why we are bringing this up at the TSC level is because Luigi Pinca would have objected to that change landing at that point because it doesn't agree with it essentially, and he would like to have some opinion on how to proceed. Essentially, in case should he pursue pursue a revert, or we should not he should not do something like it. Or should keep things as it is. For Luigi, not all callbacks must be called, and a lot of callbacks, I'm reading from the issue, are only called in response of a specific event operation. So if that operation never occurred, the callback should not be called for him. And there have been some side effects for these happening in some PRs. So that are currently blocked.
I have a question, if you don't mind. So my understanding of this is that, and this is just for me to clarify it in my own head. So basically, what used to happen was a stream would be called, every write callback would be called until there was an error, in which case one of the last one to be called was called with an error, and then it went silent. Is that how the behavior was?
No, it's if the stream was called. So if there was a bunch of write calls that were, so let's say only one write callbacks, only one write happen at a time, even if you call write multiple times. So if you have multiple writes being done in parallel with a callback, it's what happened was that if the stream was destroyed from the other side, for example, it was what will have happened is that those callbacks will never be called.
Not even with an error?
Not even with an error, exactly. The PR that we put through was make them called with an error.
So okay, my only point of view here is, and I don't have a lot of experience with streams. I'm just looking at this conceptually, right?
Yeah.
If you consider the stream to be an object, right? It's stateful, right? And so if there is an error that affects the entire stream and not just individual writes, then that error should be presented at least once per stream rather than per write.
Yeah,
and then you can say, oh, this stream is dead, so basically.
It is presented at the stream level on the on error event. The difference is, should the individual callbacks be called or not? Even though that individual callback never errored because the streams finished error from the other side. So.
Okay, So, okay, but even before this change, there was a clear indication that the stream had error. So technically, you could argue that whoever is using this API should basically keep in mind which callbacks were not called, and then basically upon error do any and all necessary cleanup. You could argue that, but then we are not providing a lot of value, because now they also have to do buffering of the callbacks, right?
Yeah, so essentially, because you can never know if a callback was called or not, then, for example, if you wrap them in a promise, you will not know if that promise would never resolve or reject. So you need to track essentially what happened in all of them if you want to rely on that behavior. With this change, you can actually avoid that.
So why does Alpinka want it reverted? Like, who does this break? It sounds like an overwhelmingly good idea to call your callbacks eventually.
Yeah, that is my point. That is my point of view. So I am representing the issue because Luigi has Luigi is asking for an opinion from the TSC if it should push a revert or not. This is the, so what is our orientation if you put through a revert, and how we would be like, he's asking for guidance essentially.
Right. I'm back to the question of like, who does it break?
Yeah, what's the case for reverting it? He must have a reason for wanting to revert it.
So
I know even
the revert for it, it's there is the case for reverting is that it's the behavior is significantly different and is not easy to monkey patch. And so supporting multiple versions of Node.js becomes way harder and essentially makes them very unreliable. So that is probably the biggest effect.
are tools like pipeline and pipe work fine with either behavior though, right? Like
Yeah, they will fine because they're relying on the outer they are fine with because they're relying on the outer error handler. There are also been some side effects on this essentially that
What do you mean by that?
So if you read through the issue, that said there have been some side effects and some bugs being open for it.
What releases is it
Meanwhile,
in?
could you please promote Rich?
Sure.
So there are two. I would recommend for you to look through the issue. There's a lot of context and a lot of lot of tests. So I'm just trying to sum it up right now.
It also sounds like it might be good to have Luigi on a call. Like we invited him this time, but he couldn't make it. Hopefully he can make it next time.
I would, I'm actually trying to, I would recommend for you to go through the issue, and we can potentially call for a vote next time, or counter numbers essentially. I am ILGTM, the original change in ILGTM, the original change. Other people that LGTM, the original change was Richard, Trott, and Anna. So I don't know.
I did try to see if Luigi could make next week as well, and he said he can't.
No, I am. I don't. From my point of view, it seems I don't know what if is anybody that go to the issue thinks that this is a good idea and we should revert. I'm personally not of that opinion, but we are being asked to get Luigi a formal answer. So I'm of the opinion of that the callback should be called all the time. That is my opinion. So
I have another conceptual question. Is it possible? Is it possible in a stream that an individual write will fail, but that does not necessarily mean that the entire stream is now useless, right? So the next write might succeed.
Every time the stream is used, every time if it errors, it's useless.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. So okay. All right. So there's no possibility of recovery with the next write.
No.
Which releases is this? Like, did this go out in?
13.
Okay.
I'm open to the idea that we should find a way to make backwards compatible support easier, but I don't. I'm reluctant to revert.
I have to agree. I'm kind of reluctant to revert. The new behavior is, I think, better. Rather avoid breakage if there's some ways we can work around it, but I don't think revert is the right option.
Just to be clear, was the old behavior that definitively one callback would call back with error and then no more write callbacks would occur after that?
Exactly.
But there would definitely be one of the outstanding writes that would get an error.
Yes. Well, yes, that's true. Yeah.
But never more than one, or just like
No,
maybe...
only the one that if there was one that was currently being written. If it was corked, 0. If the stream was corked, 0.
If somebody did a read and the read errored, thus breaking the stream.
Yeah.
In that case, would there no?
The read, the way read works, it will only that does not have a callback, so that we don't have this problem. The streams will get destroyed with an on error event handler. So
right, but if you had a stream, it had some writes open, you did a read, like you said, the read didn't have a callback. The read did an underlying call, which errored, and the stream gets destroyed.
Yeah.
Would the outstanding writes get their callback done, or would there just be an error event saying, "Hey, we're done here"?
This is a very hard question that I would need to get through and do some examples to give you a definitive answer. It really depends on the underlying implementation from my point of view. So in case of net, probably yes, it would have errored. In the generic case, I don't think so.
Right. I see I think there's a general problem in the streams, in that there's kind of 3 flows of events. There's destroy events, which sit in their own universe. There's the read stream and the write stream. And the causal relationship between those 3 semi-independent things, particularly on error, is not, it isn't really well defined.
Oh, I totally agree.
And it's better, this rule where I think if you do an operation and you gave it a callback, your callback will get called. I think that's a better, it's an improvement.
That's my, as a generic topic, I think that would be my recommendation personally, but I would be happy to, if somebody has a different opinion, Yes, please also engage in the PR if you would like to tell. Overall, have we got quorum, Michael?
We have 13 people here minus Brian, which is 12. So we have more than half of the TSC.
Okay, so does anybody object me getting back telling that overall we would like to have callbacks being called all the time? Is this a good?
No, yeah, I'm not hearing any objections to that. Okay.
Plus
Yeah, no objection to you doing that.
Yeah, okay. I would also put it into the case. In this case, I will put it in this generic. I'll put it generically, but it needs to evaluate it case by case. And I would, if we can make this a little bit better on backward compat, we will be happy to take a PR to make it so.
Yeah, and I would cast it as, 12 of the TSC members who were there didn't have any objections. We didn't necessarily have a vote or anything, right? So
yeah, exactly.
But if you're asking for an opinion, that's some strong information.
That's the opinion. There is nobody objecting on this.
Right.
Of this line. Okay, so if we didn't do a vote, that's that is.
Yeah, just because it's always possible the other people might have a different opinion, but
of course.
But yeah, but it's valid to go back and say from the people there, this is
yeah,
and it was a good number. So okay.
Yeah, no, I was just checking because if you were under quorum, it would have been way less meaningful. Essentially, we know that we have a significant amount of people that are not objecting to this.
Yeah.
And please engage in the PR, Sam, or anybody that wants to know more. It's actually some important changes in behavior. So it's actually some long-standing bugs. I personally had to dig deep into the streams object one more than once to actually call that callback because it was not being called. So there is that. Okay, I think we are good to go. So thank you.
Okay, so that was our first issue. The next issue, actually, I think we talked about last week, and I haven't had time to put any more work into it in terms of coming up with an agenda for a Node.js Future Directions Summit, either online or at the next summit. So unless anybody wants to add something to that, I suggest we move on. No, at that point, we are at the end of the issues that were tagged for the agenda. Are there any other issues that people want to discuss before we move on to the private section? Okay, if not, I'm going to stop the live stream. So thanks to everybody who's been watching, and we'll see you next week.